Yo, what it is, YouTube? It's your boy Nitsa coming back with another bullseye of a tutorial here today on the channel. I wanted to talk about a compressor that caught my eye, just bringing a lot of life to my music lately. I wanted to share, some gems with y'all, and also wanted to talk about what is the true meaning of compression. Like, what does compression actually mean, and how is it a tool that can help you become really expressive with your music? Help you put your personality, your touch into the music. So let's go ahead and first, let's not waste no time, and let's start listening to the music right away and get an idea of kind of like what's going on today. Let's jump right into it. Let's go.
Every time I keep it real with you lie to me. I just want the things to go back and be high. Used to everybody leave me, my father even neglecting me. Bitch, you lied to me, my mom the only thing protecting me. God bless me with wisdom and help me see through a lot of things. I've been trying to pray because lately I feel a lot of pain. Living life where I live, I bet that you wouldn't lie. Dreaming about the future with nightmares that reviving the past. Germanium, you won't be straight, them niggas told me. I'm young and black, I learned the dream from watching Kobe. You see what I'm doing, now you acting like you know me. I know you gon' fold on me just by the shit you showed me. I keep this shit so real that they be telling me to stop. You ain't even feeling love me till you see my body drop. You were supposed to be my dog, but you been rocking with the R. Why you acting like you beef when you know I be on the block?
All right, so that's the main idea of the song that we have here today. So let's jump into this. This is the Softube Germanium compressor, and I wanted to look into this a little bit further. So this is a very interesting compressor. Let's talk a little bit about the history. This is kind of like a very interesting compressor in the way, like the very first time I heard it, it just really inspired me a lot. And that's what I'm trying to bring to you guys, is a little bit of inspiration. So the way I kind of see compression, like what is compression really? I guess to a lot of people it would have like a different type of meaning, but one thing I don't like is when people say, oh, compression is all about taming the piece. You gotta tame the piece, and once you take the first piece, you gotta tame the other piece. But the thing about it, and especially in a situation like this, underutilizing compression, if you only see it kind of like as just some tool, like a hammer for you to bang a nail into, there's a very expressive and like a tonality message type of way that you can get off with compression. So compression is kind of like helping you. You as an engineer, you're a translator. The music is talking to you, but then you got to use the tools like compression to translate how you feeling in the idea and what the music is speaking to the world, because not everybody can hear everything that's going on in a song, but they can always feel it. So that's always got to be the main thing about making music, is the feeling, how I could get how this song made me feel. I'm trying to make everybody feel like that. So let's look into this right away. So you got something like the Softube Germanium compressor. It's a hybrid compressor. It's very interesting. It's using diode bridge as well as FET topology. So let's look at kind of like the first type of diode bridge compressor. So this is kind of like the father, which is the Neve 2254. Waves has made an emulation, which is the V-Comp. This one is very warm. Originally this type of bus compressor, it was found in kind of like a broadcasting console, when people was working in radio and all those other type of situations, when they were trying to get the signal to travel through long distances through the radio, cars, the speakers, all that type of stuff, they had to use the compression to make the sound dense. So that's kind of like the utility side. Very interesting thing about this compressor is it doesn't have no attack time. It has fixed ratios and fixed releases. It even has a de-esser function as well. So how this kind of works is backwards. The compression comes first, then the limiting side. So it's pretty interesting, very tonally. You can get a lot of weight, a lot of size from this one, and this is one I don't like to hit too hard, somewhere around 1 to 3 beat dB. I love using it on rap vocals, just making them feel so much larger than life. Maybe sometime I don't have no background vocals, but I want everything that the rapper is saying to just come off big with a lot more size to give a lot of body and make it stand on 10 toes when it's in the inside of the beat. So then after that, the other part of the Softube Germanium compressor is kind of like the mother, which is the 1176 portion. So 1176 is incredible, where it gives you the variable attack and release times. It also gives you a lot of options, a lot of tonality, a lot of grit. And I believe that something like the 1176, that's when the solid state components started to come in. So in the beginning it was like tube consoles, then a little bit of diode bridge came along the way. There's like the Chandler limited limiter, there's the Neve 33609, there's all that stuff. So the diode bridge came around that time too, and then after that, you had the solid state components, SSL consoles. So yeah, the 1176 is so quick, it's so fast, and that's one disadvantage of the V-Comp, is the fact that it's not really as responsive as 1176. That's kind of one of the disadvantages of the V-Comp, is that it's not as responsive as an 1176 type of situation, where the 1176, maybe nowadays nowadays you have some source material that's really quick, you know, especially like instruments, kick, bass, all that stuff is kind of like really quick transient energy. Sometimes the V comp isn't fast enough to handle that type of stuff. So the V comp is more like a mellow, you know, hold up, chill out little piece type of thing that I like to use. But the Softube Germanium compressor, it gives you the best of both worlds. So let's look at some of the controls. You know, you have this very first part, which is the clean and the dirty comp. So if you don't want to, you know, get some of that FET type of distortion, that quick grittiness that you'll get from the 1176, you'll put it on clean. Usually I always put it on dirty because that's what I go to. You know, with the compression, you got to understand that, you know, certain times you got to go to a certain compressor because it's going to give you a certain quality. So that's what compression is to me. You know, it's a tool that's helping me shape like a statue. You know, people who make portraits and statues and stuff like that, you know, sometimes they have a big brush or they have a little brush, or maybe they have like a big, you know, chiseling hammer or a small one to really get in there, you know, or like a little saw thing to smooth it out. So, you know, these are all different tools that's going to help you shape and form, you know, your vocals and the message of the song. So let's look at this. You know, you have the clean and the dirty comp. I usually always keep it on dirty because that's what I'm going to it for. You have a sidechain function, which is good because the 1176 or the V comp, neither of those have that. And then you have something like this kind of like this stepped ratio here, which is pretty good. You get a lot more options than you would get in the 1176. You know, in 1176 you get like 4, 8, all buttons in, all that stuff. V comp, you don't really get to pick as many things, but this, you get a lot more options with the ratios. And the ratio is kind of like the density of the compression. You know, you could be doing 3 dB with a 2-to-1 ratio or 3 dB with a 4-to-1 ratio, and it's going to sound different. And that's due to the fact that it's just the density of the compression. You know, it's about how much weight it's kind of giving you. Usually I like to use lower ratios for vocals just because they help that vocal get the character that I want from the compression but still remain light on its toes and be able to move and flow through the track. So then after that you have the compression curves, which is pretty interesting. You know, this one gives you a lot of knees that you get to pick, and the knee is kind of like the transition of the compression. Like, you know, somebody kind of angry, you know, they kind of chop out their words a little bit and everything's a little step and jagged, you know. But when somebody's vibing, you know, and they cooling, and then, you know, the transition a little bit slow and we ain't really worried, that's kind of like what the knee does. You know, the knee has a big part in that. And the knee is very interesting because you can go from having something very subtle on the Germanium compressor to something very aggressive like the Zener hard. So the mix knob, I never usually use it that much, but it's very good to have because you can pull it back a little bit if you want the dry signal. Then you have the attack and release, so it's pretty interesting. And now with the attack, it's kind of like the starting position. I kind of see the attack and the release kind of like a race, like a NASCAR type of race, where the attack time is kind of like where is the car starting in the race, and then the release time is how fast is the car snapping off the line. You know, so usually if you use something like a slower release, it will kind of stabilize, you know, the material. It will kind of make it a little bit stationary. It'll kind of go from 0 to 20. But if you have a very fast release, then it'll go from 0 to 50. Boom, you know, it'll kind of just dart off the line a little bit, kind of like a track runner or something like that. And then you have something like the Germanium drive. This is where a lot of that tone comes from. You know, you can get some really distorted type of sounds from this. So you can balance between the kind of like the distortion and between the feedback as well. So it's kind of like the distortion and also kind of like the high frequencies, and this is very smooth on the high end. Usually I don't recommend to bring in like an 1176 type of compressor in the beginning, because when you don't have the S's in control, you know, a lot of the energy sometimes can be either in the real low of a vocal or at the real top where that transient is at. You know, different words got a different amount of energy, and I just feel like sometimes, you know, bringing an 1176 in a little bit early can get a little bit sloppy. But the Chandler is very musical. Let's listen to how I use this to spice up a lead vocal.
Every time I keep it real with you lie to me. I just want the things to go back and be high. Used to everybody leave me, my father even neglect me. Bitch, you lied to me, my mom the only thing protecting me. God bless me with wisdom and help me see through a lot of things. I've been trying to pray because lately I feel a lot of pain. Living life where I live, I bet that you wouldn't lie. Dreaming about the future with nightmares that reviving the past. J-Mac, you gon' be straight, them niggas told me. I'm young and black, I learned the dream from watching Kobe. You see what I'm doing, now you acting like you know me. I know you gon' fold on me to buy the shit you show me. I keep this shit so real that they be telling me to stop. You ain't even feeling love me till you see my body drop. You were supposed to be my dog, but you been rocking with the R. Why you acting like it's beef when you know I be on?
So it's really just something about the Softube Germanium. It does make it like a 1% different, kind of like a 5% different, but it kind of makes it not feel like a digital recording. It adds a little bit of that life. It makes you feel like, man, they neglected me. Duh, duh, duh. So usually the way the rapper is rapping, the message of the song is what's going to trigger me to pick what type of compressor that I'm using. And pay attention, I kind of used the slow attack because I wanted the vocal to still feel very open. I didn't want to clamp on the transient because I kind of wanted you know, the vocal to not seem too back. So if you have a fast attack, it's kind of like starting at the back of the race. But if you have a slow attack, it's kind of like you're starting at kind of like in the first couple slots of the race. So a slower attack will kind of keep the vocal forward in the starting position. Then with the release, I did have it fast because I kind of wanted it to like dart off and like everything that he was saying, I wanted you to really feel it. And you know, sometimes with a slow release, you can kind of hold back the flow of the rapper. So always pay attention to like the flow of the rapper, the tempo that they rapping. That will kind of tell you how to set your release time. Next thing that I like to use this for is the actual like kind of like background vocals. And with the Germanium, I like to get really aggressive with the background vocals. I use the fast attack to clamp on a little bit of that transient and a fast release, just kind of helping the background vocals pump and breathe a little bit.
Every time I keep it real with you, you lie to me. I just wanted things to go back and be high. Used to everybody leave me, my father even neglected me. Bitch, you lied to me, my mom the only thing protecting me. God bless me with wisdom and help me see through a lot of things. I've been trying to pray because lately I feel a lot of pain. Living life I live, I bet that you wouldn't lie. Dreaming about the future with nightmares that reviving the past. Jim at you won't be straight, them nigga told me. I'm young and black, I learned the dream from watching Kobe. You see what I'm doing, now you acting like you know me. I know you gon' fold on me to buy the shit you show me. I keep this shit so real that they be telling me to stop. You ain't even.
See, and that's a perfect example of about just how I feel about music, vocals especially. Sometimes when you record something, it feels like you took a piece of paper, or a board and you just wrote it down. You know, like once you write something down, it's written down, that's it. And this compressor really just kind of helps the words of the music jump off of the page. Feels like his experience, like now you feel like a little bit of air coming through. And you know, a part of that too is kind of like how I handled you know, the compression curve. You know, I used a little bit of a harder knee, and that kind of just helps the compression be a little bit more gruff. You lied to me. I used to be, used to be. So that's usually how I kind of see compression. You know, the harder knee will kind of make it more abrupt, more direct. And I like to use a harder knee to put more emphasis specifically on the background vocals, just give it a little bit of pump, a little bit of breathing. Okay, so also I wanted to talk about the EQ. You know, I just use the basic EQ, you know, nothing crazy or over the top, but you know, the low end energy that goes into a compressor is pretty important. It will kind of determine how much, you know, how much it will be working. So the sidechain is pretty important as well, but usually I like to just set the compressor, then start working backwards, take the filter and kind of see like how much low end can I fit in? How does the low end affect how the compressor is jumping? Because if I put more low end energy into the compressor might just start, you know, pumping and breathing and moving a little bit fast, depending on the words, especially the sustain of his words. If he's saying longer words, it might make the compression work a little bit longer because more energy that has like a kind of like a longer note is going to clamp down by the compressor, you know. So I kind of like to work backwards, use the compressor, then EQ into the compressor using a filter. So the Avid filters are pretty gritty, and I like that too. You know, you got to know the EQ that you're using. And also another crazy thing that I did here that I always do is the back-to-back parallel compressor. So my lead vocal got a parallel compressor. Let's check that out for like half a moment.
Me see through a lot of things. I've been trying to pray because lately I feel a lot of pain. Living life I live, I bet that you wouldn't lie. Dreaming about the future.
The compressor on my lead vocals kind of has a slow release. You know, it's just really giving some stability to the mid channel. And then I went ahead and used some contrast. So parallel compression is not all about, oh man, you know, I just took a 776 and I pinned the needle down and yeah, I'm good, man. It's not really about that. Sometimes parallel compression to me is about movement. It's about life. And I think when I did the distressor as well, I kind of had like a medium attack. So it's not always about, you know, fast attack. It depends on how you want to approach it. But me personally, I did another parallel compressor for my background vocals, and I used a little bit of mid-side processing. That's another great, you know, thing that this plugin lets you do is a little bit mid-side processing. So I got the background vocals kind of flamming a little bit on the parallel. Let's check it out. This is it right here. Look at it.
Me see through a lot of things. I've been trying to pray because lately I feel a lot of pain. Living life I live, I bet that you wouldn't lie. Dreaming about the future with nightmares that revive in the past. J-Mac, you gon' be straight, them nigga told me. I'm young and black, I learned the dream from watching Kobe. You see what I'm doing now.
So kind of like that 1%, I would say this probably actually makes 10% difference to me, in my opinion, because now it's kind of like the background vocals are like, they kind of have like this little bit of wobbliness, a little bit movement, and they kind of also feel wider as well. So that's another thing that I like to use mid-side compression for, but I use mid-side on parallel this time to kind of just add a little bit of more, you know, intensity, a little bit more flamming to the sides of the background vocals. And, you know, let's look at the pans. I panned it hard left and right, and, you know, that's kind of going in there as well. So it just helped bring a little bit more energy to the background vocals. You know, sometimes people, they do their background vocals with not that much energy, which does make sense because maybe you have an aggressive lead vocal and you just chilling on the background vocals, but you still want a little bit more punch. Maybe you can use something like a parallel mid-side in this manner. Don't get too crazy, but just figure out something that works for you. And of course, fast release, I'm trying to have it dart off the line every time. Whoo, whoo, whoo. So that's generally how I go about doing that. And also, if you paid attention as well, the compression curves are different. So this one has a way softer knee, kind of letting the background parallel breathe a little bit, but this kind of mid channel kind of has like a little bit more denser type of thing. So then the last thing that we have here for this type of compressor, I like to use it, is on parallel. Michael Brower, one of my favorite engineers of all time, Mr. Parallel Compression himself, loves to use this compressor on his tube bus. So I kind of replicated what he does. He also has the preset and the plugin, and I kind of use it kind of like Andrew Sheps as well, as another guy. He likes to take a stereo pair of 1176s and kind of crush his whole mix. Helps give the mix a lot more density, a lot more anger, a lot more aggression, a lot more you know, everything that you kind of need for rap. Let's listen.
Me see through a lot of things. I've been trying to pray because lately I feel a lot of pain. Living life I live, I bet that you wouldn't lie. Dreaming about the future with nightmares that revive in the past. J-Mac, you gon' be straight, them nigga told me. I'm young and black, I learned the dream from watching Kobe. You see what I'm doing, now you acting like you know me. I know you gon' fold on me to buy the shit you show me. I keep this shit so real that they be telling me to stop. You ain't even feeling love me till you see my body drop. You were supposed to be my dog, but you been rocking with the art.
So it's absolutely lovely what this compressor can do, especially on the parallel. Now you hear the bass a little bit more, the vocal just really shot up forward, and also the guitars as well. That's something that this compressor is amazing for, like electric guitars or like drum overheads, all that type of stuff, you know, all that extra stuff. So this is kind of like what I like to use this compressor for, and this is what compression is truly about. That's the main idea of my video today. Compression is not about just, you gotta tame those peaks, man. It's not about that. Look at all these opportunities of movement, life, character, or tonality, translation of the message of the music that you can get through using compressors. So that's my main idea today. You can also get a lot of density, a lot of size, a lot of these things that you might feel like you're lacking from your music. Maybe you already have the tools that you need to get to where you need to be, but you're not utilizing it. Maybe you're driving a Ferrari, but you're only driving it at 10 miles per hour and you figuring out why everybody keeps jumping in front of you. Maybe you're not using the tools the right way. So this is kind of like the end of the video that I got today. If you guys got any more questions or concerns, drop it down below. I appreciate y'all. Just want to say thanks a lot for being a great part of my YouTube family now. Peace.